Hey friends, today I want to talk about model context protocol. But first, I'll talk about augmented LLMs and then a brief intro to what is model context protocol, which was introduced by Claude. Then I'll show you two MCPs in action: web search and file system with Claude Desktop. So let's understand what is augmented LLMs. So when LLMs came into picture, they were usually these standalone LLMs, which would take basically our input from, they were already large language models that were trained on internet data, and they can produce certain text or other modalities. The problem is most of the work that we do, the context is spread around a lot of tools, right? For example, we do search, for which we need web search. If you're working on a computer, we have to operate our computers. You need context of certain files. If you're working in office, you need context of your office, and that data is either in Confluence or somewhere else. So standalone LLMs that were pre-trained on internet data, they were not very helpful because they will always generate responses based on their trained knowledge. So this concept of augmented LLMs come into picture, and this is very helpful when you're building any products on top of the LLMs, because essentially you have to work with augmented LLMs, and standalone LLMs are very limited in nature. So what are augmented LLMs? Augmented LLMs are those LLMs which have access to tools, and the LLMs are smart enough to invoke these tools or utilize these tools as per the user task. So what are these tools? These tools could be about fetching external knowledge. So everyone must be aware of retrieval augmented generation, which is, or RAG, which is nothing but having LLMs having access to the right knowledge as per the task. Of course, the application layer has to do the job of retrieving the right knowledge as per the task and giving it back to the LLM. But it's all about LLMs being augmented with external knowledge so that they don't have to depend on the knowledge that they were pre-trained with. They can actually gather the external knowledge. Another big example of it is web search. Perplexity is famous for it. Now ChatGPT also has web search, which is again an LLM having a tool to do web search and enriching their responses with latest knowledge versus just pre-trained knowledge. But you can extend this logic to any kind of task. So for example, ChatGPT today can run, not just generate the code, they can actually run the code, and they can take the feedback from running the code and work on top of it. That gives us a lot of capabilities like running Python code, generating better code, workable code, or even doing, for example, data analysis, for which it will generate the code and it will run, and it will matplotlib and so on, it will generate graph. So that also is nothing but LLM having access to Python interpreter if it's generating Python code. Similarly, Claude can generate JavaScript code and run it in our browser. But you can think of like more tools are coming. For example, computer use. So what if I give a task to the computer, to an LLM to do something, and it has access to a computer use tool, and it can just go do things on the computer. So all of these are nothing but access to tools, APIs, other services, your databases and whatnot. And LLMs are smart enough to figure out, or we have to invoke it as an application developer, or LLMs are smart enough to get access to these tools, invoke these tools, and enrich their responses with more data. So with this concept, Claude came up with this concept of MCP, or model context protocol, which was nothing but, it's a standardized way. A protocol is nothing but a set of rules, right? For example, JSON is a protocol for us. It's a structured format to be able to send data in APIs and consume. Similarly, model context protocol is just a set of rules, which makes it very standardized and easy for other applications, database, external services to expose their context or their data or their functions to the LLMs. So how it works is that LLMs, MCP client or MCP host is nothing but an application that is using MCP. Classic example is a Claude Desktop, but more and more IDs like Klein, Cursor, Windsurf, they are also providing, now they are also MCP hosts, right? And these MCP hosts have MCP client implementation, and they can connect to various MCP servers. These MCP servers are independent databases, applications, APIs and whatnot, and they can expose their tools or their functions, their APIs to this client, and that allows these MCP hosts or these applications to do much better job of completing your different tasks because they have access to these tools, right? So they are essentially like their LLMs are augmented. So I'm going to give you example of two MCPs that I used recently that were really amazing. One is web search using Brave Search API, and the other is access to my file system. So I gave LLMs access to my desktop and and documents folder, and now I can automate certain repetitive tasks. So the MCP host that I'm going to use is Claude desktop app. Somehow it does not work with the web. I'm not sure why, but Claude desktop app is an MCP host. So here, when you open Claude desktop app and you essentially go to settings, as you can see here, if you go to developer, there are this file system and Brave search. These are the MCP. I've already set it up. But if you go to this edit config file, the file will look something similar to this. This is the file. So this is a JSON structure using which you can add MCP. So I've added the file system MCP. You can just search Google search and it will provide you how to add it. But I also added this Brave search and added my API key. It's freely available for certain limited usage. And I wanted to augment my Claude LLMs or Claude use by giving it access to file system and Brave search. And I wanted to use it for those tasks. So let's see. So for example, here, when you set up this config file and you restart your Claude, you will see this tools. So right now, using these two MCP servers, file system and Brave search, I have access to these different tools. So for example, it can do Brave local search, Brave web search, create directory, directory tree, edit file, and so on. So these are the tools that are given by file system. So it can do a lot of things on your file system. So now I'm going to ask it first to perform certain web search. So Claude currently does not support search like ChatGPT does, but using this MCP, it will be able to do. So I'm going to ask about, hey, I'm traveling to London in April. So please tell me the weather there. Please search and tell me the weather there, minimum and maximum temperature. And any chance of rain. So here I've been more explicit that it needs to search, but usually LLMs, they are becoming more and more smarter to understand when to invoke a tool or not. So let's see. Okay, so here it is trying to invoke this MCP server. So you can see run Brave web search. So it wants to run web search. Right now, the way it works, it always asks you for, whenever it is using a tool, it asks you for permission. So I'm going to allow it for this chat. And this is the query it is running, and it has gotten some response. Okay, great. So it basically essentially called their web search API. The good thing is that LLMs are smart enough to invoke these tools. So you can have natural conversations, and if it has access to tools, it will do the best to solve your problem. So I've gotten the temperature, rainfall, and general conditions. Good. Another thing I do a lot is I take a lot of screenshots, and what I'm going to do is, this is a screenshot I had taken. I take a lot of random screenshots if I like something in other products. What I'm going to show you is, for example, this particular file. I'm going to move this using Claude to this screenshots folder. Stop with name and move it to screenshots folder. So this is essentially like operating your computer with just English instructions. I think that's where all the software world is moving. So as you can see here, it already identified it has access to this file system. So it will, since it will run a lot of multiple tools for finding the file, moving the file, searching the file. So right now it's a bit annoying. It keeps asking me for getting access to these tools, but I'm sure Claude will do better in this regard. So it is able to find the file, and now it is going to run list directory. It is going to find the screenshots folder. I can see the folder already exists, and now it will move the file. Great. So now the file has been successfully moved. Okay, and it has used various tools that were provided by the file system MCP. So now let's see if this file is actually moved. So I'm going to go and say 113949 screenshots. Let me go and see. Yep, I can see it in my screenshots folder. Let's move. So this is a very small example, but it actually shows the power of augmented LLMs, which is if they have access to these tools, and if all services start realizing that the way for us to work with computers is going to be via LLMs or via English instructions, a lot of these external tools and services will expose themselves to LLMs. And as consumers, for us, it is all about just instructing in English language a computer to do something, and it should be able to figure out how to do it.